Hey there, and welcome back to I Think You're Muted, the podcast where we break down the complexities of the workplace and give you the tools to navigate them with confidence. I'm Dr. Stephanie Dean, and today we're tackling a topic that's crucial for anyone looking to make an impact in their meetings, managing those power dynamics. Let's be honest, meetings aren't just about discussing projects or brainstorming ideas. They're also arenas where power dynamics play out. Whether we realize it or not, these dynamics can shape who speaks up, who gets heard, and ultimately who influences decisions. If you've ever felt like your voice was sidelined or that hierarchy in the room was steering the conversation, this episode is for you. So grab your coffee or your tea or whatever keeps you focused, and let's get started.
Welcome to I Think You're Muted, the podcast empowering professional women to step up, speak out, and be heard. I'm Dr. Stephanie Dean, and after hearing I think you're muted one too many times in meetings, I realized many of us are living our lives on mute. Your voice is your most powerful tool, and in each episode, you'll get the strategies and stories to help you find it, overcome challenges, and lead with confidence. Ready to turn up the volume on your impact? Let's dive in.
Okay, first things first, let's talk about what we mean by power dynamics. Power dynamics refer to the way that power is distributed and exercised in a group setting. In a meeting, this could be influenced by factors like organizational hierarchy, seniority, expertise, or even personality. These dynamics often dictate who leads the conversation, whose opinions are prioritized, and who might feel sidelined. But here's the thing, power dynamics aren't always as obvious as they seem. Sometimes they're subtle, like when the most senior person in the room speaks first. It sets the tone for the entire discussion. Or when certain voices consistently dominate the conversation while others are more hesitant to speak up. Recognizing these dynamics is the first step to navigating them effectively. Now, it's crucial to acknowledge that power dynamics in meetings don't just play out based on job titles or experience. They can also be deeply influenced by gender and race. Research shows that women and people of color often face additional challenges in asserting their voices in meetings due to these intersecting dynamics. For example, a study by McKinsey & Company in partnership with leanin.org found that women are less likely to speak up in meetings than their male counterparts, particularly when they're in the minority in the group. This is even more pronounced for women of color who often face a double bind of both racial and gender biases. These studies reveal that only 38% of Black women and 31% of Latina women said they're often able to speak up and share their ideas in meetings. This is in comparison to 48% of white women. Another study published in the Harvard Business Review highlighted that when women and people of color do speak up, they're more likely to face pushback or have their ideas dismissed. This can make it even more challenging for them to navigate these power dynamics effectively, as they might feel that their contributions are undervalued or overlooked. Even more concerning, research from Stanford University found that when Black employees speak up with new ideas or suggestions, they're often perceived as being less team-orientated than their white counterparts. This perception can lead to contributions being undervalued or ignored, further entrenching power imbalances in the workplace. Understanding these dynamics is crucial because it allows you to strategize how to engage effectively. It's not about overthrowing the hierarchy. It's about finding ways to assert your voice within it, even in environments where you may feel at a disadvantage due to your gender or race. For example, if you're in a meeting with your boss and other senior leaders, you might feel like your role is to listen rather than contribute. Or maybe you've noticed that when certain colleagues speak, their ideas are given more weight simply because of their position or reputation. These are all manifestations of power dynamics at play. Recognizing these patterns, especially how they intersect with gender and race, gives you the insight you need to navigate them strategically. By understanding the landscape, you can better position yourself to contribute effectively and to ensure that your voice is heard, regardless of the dynamics at play. So once you're aware of the power dynamics at play, the next step is figuring out how to navigate them effectively. So let's go through some strategies that can help you assert your voice, contribute meaningfully, and ensure that your ideas are taken seriously, even in the face of hierarchical pressures. The first is to choose the right moment. In meetings where power dynamics are strong, timing can be everything. Sometimes the best way to make your voice heard is to choose the right moment to speak. For instance, if you're presenting an idea that might challenge the status quo, consider waiting until after the senior leader has spoken. This doesn't mean that you're deferring to them out of fear. It's a strategic move to gauge the room and build on what's already been said. You might say something like, "I appreciate the points that the senior leader has raised." Name them, don't say senior leader. But I'd like to add another perspective. This way, you're showing respect for the hierarchy, but you're also making your contributions stand out as thoughtful and considered. Another example might be chiming in when the conversation is shifting towards decision making. This is often the moment when your input is most valuable, and by timing your contributions well, you can position yourself as a key voice in the discussion. So another strategy is to use data and facts to support your ideas. When you're in a meeting dominated by strong personalities or higher ups, it can be challenging to make your voice heard. However, one of the most effective ways to assert your ideas is by backing them up with data and facts. Doing this not only adds credibility to your arguments, but it also shifts the focus from subjective opinions to objective information, and that's harder to dismiss. For instance, imagine you're proposing a new strategy for the company. Instead of presenting it as a good idea, you could ground your proposal in solid data by saying, based on the latest market research, we've seen a 20% increase in our demand for this type of product. I believe this supports the case for shifting our focus towards this market segment. So, this approach provides a strong foundation for your argument, making it more persuasive and less likely to be overlooked. Another example might be when you're suggesting a change in process. Instead of simply stating a new approach that could be beneficial, you could say something like, in similar companies, implementing this change led to a 15% reduction in costs within the first year. I believe this evidence strongly supports our consideration of a similar initiative. By using data, you appeal to the logical, fact-based side of decision-making, which can help you engage with even the most dominant voices in the room. You are showing that you have done your homework. Okay, the third strategy is to find allies in the room. Navigating power dynamics doesn't have to be a solo effort. One of the most powerful strategies you can use is to identify and engage allies in the room, people who are sharing your perspective or who hold influence within the group. Building rapport with these individuals before the meeting can help you feel more supported when it's time to speak up. For example, let's say you're about to propose a new project that might be met with resistance. Before the meeting, you could discuss your ideas with a trusted colleague who understands and supports your vision. During the meeting, you might refer to them and say, hey, you had some great insights on this during our last discussion. Would you mind sharing them now? This approach not only brings your ally into the conversation, but also subtly reinforces the idea through another voice, adding weight to your proposal. Another way to engage allies could be by collaborating on a joint presentation. If you know there's someone in the meeting who has a strong influence, consider reaching out to them beforehand to discuss the topic and see if they'd be willing to support your points. You might say during the meeting, hey, this person and I were discussing this earlier, and we both felt that this approach would be beneficial to the team. This strategy can help amplify your voice, especially in environments where power dynamics are at play. Okay, the fourth strategy, ask thoughtful questions. Asking the right questions can be just as powerful as making statements, especially in a room where power dynamics are at play. Thoughtful questions can serve multiple purposes. They can redirect the conversation, they can challenge underlying assumptions, and they can open up a space for different perspectives, including your own. For instance, if you notice that the discussion is heavily influenced by one person's viewpoint, you might ask, that's an interesting approach. How do you think it will impact? And then add, another aspect of the project here. This question not only demonstrates your engagement with the topic, but also invites the group to consider the broader implications and subtly shifts the focus. Alternatively, if the conversation seems to be heading in a direction that excludes certain perspectives, you could ask, can we explore some alternative solutions that might address this issue differently? This kind of question encourages the group to think more creatively and inclusively, potentially opening the door for your own ideas to be introduced. By asking thoughtful questions, you can guide the conversation towards areas where your contributions can make a significant impact. So the fifth strategy is to leverage your unique perspective. Power dynamics might sometimes make you feel like you need to conform to the dominant voices in the room, but it's important to remember that your unique perspective is one of your greatest strengths. Whether it's your specialized expertise, your hands-on experience, or a fresh take on an issue, don't shy away from bringing your distinct viewpoint to the table. For example, you might say, from my experience working on this project, I've seen that this approach can lead to ... This not only highlights your expertise, but also grounds your input in real-world examples. It makes it more compelling. Another approach to leveraging your unique perspective might be to say something like, as someone who's closely engaged with our clients, I've noticed that ... By framing your contributions around your unique perspective, you're adding value to the discussion that others may not be able to provide. It's also important to remember that your perspective might offer insights that the group hasn't considered. For instance, if you have a background in a particular area that's relevant to the discussion, you could say, given my background in insert field, I think it's important we consider, and then your point. This not only reinforces your authority on the subject, but also positions you as a key contributor and a unique contributor to that conversation. Of course, navigating power dynamics isn't just about making your point, right? It's also about handling pushback when it comes, and it's going to come. In any meeting, especially one with a hierarchy, you might face resistance, whether it's a challenge to your ideas, a difference in opinion, or an attempt to sideline your contributions. Handling these situations effectively is crucial to ensuring that your voice remains part of the conversation. Let's look at some strategies that can help you handle pushback with confidence and maintain your influence in the discussion. The first strategy is to stay calm and collected. When you're faced with pushback, it's natural to feel defensive, right? Especially if your ideas or contributions are being questioned. However, the key to handling these situations is to stay calm and composed. By maintaining your composure, you demonstrate professionalism and keep the conversation productive. For example, let's say someone challenges your ideas during a meeting. Instead of reacting immediately or defensively, take a deep breath, listen carefully to their criticism, and once they've finished, you could respond with something like, I appreciate your perspective, and I think it's important to consider all angles. Here's why I believe my approach could work. This response not only shows that you're open to a discussion, but also signals that you're confident in your stance and you're willing to engage in a constructive dialogue. Another way to stay calm is to acknowledge the other person's point of view before presenting your counterpoint. For instance, you might say something like, I see where you're coming from, and that's definitely something to think about. I'd like to add to that. This approach helps diffuse potential tension and keeps the conversation focused on finding the best solution rather than devolving into a back and forth argument. The next strategy is to reinforce your point with new evidence. Sometimes when your initial contribution is met with resistance, it's helpful to reinforce your point with additional evidence or examples. This could involve bringing in new data, referencing past suggestions, or even drawing on insights of others in the room to strengthen your argument. For instance, if someone expresses doubt about your proposal, you might say something like, I'd like to add to that in similar situations. We've seen success with this approach. If we look at, insert example, the results were, insert point. By providing more context or supporting data, you're not only strengthening your case, but you're also demonstrating that your ideas have a solid foundation. In addition, you could invite others to support your point by saying something like, hey, I know you've had experience with this issue. Could you share your thoughts on how this approach has worked in the past? This not only brings in another voice into the discussion, but also reinforces your position with additional credibility. By doing so, you're showing that your idea isn't just a personal opinion. Again, it's backed up by experience and by evidence you've done your homework, you're adding value. And the third strategy is to know when to fold them, as Kenny Rogers would say. Finally, it's important to recognize when it's time to yield gracefully. In some situations, the room just may not be ready and receptive to hear your idea, and pushing too hard could lead to diminishing returns. Knowing when to fold them or when to step back and when to regroup is a sign of maturity and strategic thinking. Yielding does not mean giving up on your ideas entirely. I told a dean of my college once, no just means not right now. It means finding another opportunity to revisit it, perhaps in a different format or with different stakeholders. For example, if the room seems resistant, you might want to say something like, I see there's some concerns with this approach. I'll take that feedback and see how we can address those issues moving forward. This response shows that you are listening and that you value the input of others and you're willing to collaborate to find the best solution. Another scenario might involve deferring to the group's decision while leaving the door open for future discussion. You could say something like, it seems that we're leaning in a different direction today, but I'd like to keep this idea in mind as we move forward, especially if we encounter similar challenges. This way, you maintain your position without forcing the issue, and you leave the possibility open for revisiting this idea at a later time. Handling pushback in a meeting, especially when power dynamics are at play, requires a blend of confidence and strategic thinking and emotional intelligence. By staying calm and reinforcing your points with evidence and knowing when to fold them and when to yield, you can navigate these situations effectively and ensure that your contributions remain a valuable part of the conversation. As you head into your next meeting, I encourage you to try out these strategies. I want you to pay attention to the power dynamics at play and think about how you can navigate them in a way that ensures your voice is heard. Whether it's timing your contributions, backing up your points with data, or leveraging your unique perspective, these tactics can help you assert your ideas effectively, even in the most hierarchical environments. And if you're looking for more ways to prepare, I've got a couple of things up my sleeve here. We've got a free resource that walks you through strategies for managing power dynamics in meetings. You can download it at corvididesign.com/meeting. That's corvididesign.com/meeting. It's a great tool to help you feel confident and ready to make an impact in your next meeting. But if you're struggling to confidently ask for what you're worth, I also have something called the Confident Negotiator Toolkit. It's got proven strategies to master negotiation, communicate your value, and really secure the opportunities you deserve. If you're really ready to step into your power, visit corvididesign.com/worth and grab your toolkit today. It's got some great strategies and it will help you get some quick wins. So let me close with this. Navigating power dynamics in meetings can be challenging, but with the right strategies, you can ensure that your voice is heard and that your contributions are valued. It's all about finding that balance between asserting yourself and respecting the hierarchy, and making sure that your ideas get the attention they deserve. In the next episode, we're going to discuss how to set the agenda and lead meetings effectively. We're going to discuss how to create an inclusive environment, set clear objectives, and drive meetings with purpose to achieve the outcomes you need and you want. It's going to be packed with practical tips, so make sure you tune in. If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to subscribe, share it with your colleagues, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more listeners and continue to provide valuable content that empowers professionals just like you. Thank you so much for joining me on I Think You're Muted. Until next time, remember, your voice matters, and with the right strategies, you can make sure it's heard.